There is a reason some people slowly lose their presence. Not suddenly, not dramatically. No one wakes up one day and realizes their authority is gone. It disappears quietly, through small comforts, through harmless habits, through choices that feel easy and safe. Nothing feels wrong at first. Life becomes smoother. Resistance decreases. Struggle fades. And that feels like progress. But something else fades too. The sharpness in the eyes. The weight in the voice. The quiet gravity that once made others listen. Not because the person became weak, but because the mind stopped encountering friction. Psychology reveals something most people never notice. The mind does not grow through comfort. It stabilizes through resistance. When resistance disappears, authority slowly evaporates. Easy habits feel innocent, scrolling when bored, delaying when uncomfortable, choosing comfort instead of completion. None of these destroy you immediately. They soften you, and softness, when repeated daily, reshapes identity. The brain adapts to whatever is repeated. If effort is rare, effort becomes foreign. If discipline is optional, discipline becomes exhausting. If discomfort is avoided, discomfort becomes intolerable. And without realizing it, the mind lowers its internal standards. This lowering does not feel like decline. It feels like relief. But relief without challenge rewires the nervous system. The mind begins expecting ease. And when ease becomes expectation, authority collapses. Because authority is not built on comfort. It is built on self-command. The moment the mind stops obeying intention and starts obeying convenience, something inside begins to decay, silently, invisibly. And once that decay begins, no external success can compensate for it, because authority is not something you show. It is something others feel. And the mind always knows when it no longer leads itself. Easy habits don't destroy authority by making life worse. They destroy it by making life too easy. The human mind was never designed to live without friction. Friction is not punishment. It is orientation. When resistance disappears, the mind loses its sense of position. It no longer knows where it stands. Every day becomes softer than the last. Tasks are postponed because they can be. Discomfort is avoided because it feels unnecessary. Effort is negotiated instead of executed. And negotiation weakens command. A disciplined mind gives orders. An undisciplined mind debates. Debate feels intelligent, but debate without action trains hesitation. Hesitation slowly becomes personality. This is where authority begins to leak, not outwardly, inwardly. The individual may still speak with confidence, still perform, still appear capable, but internally the mind has learned something dangerous. I don't have to listen immediately. This lesson seems harmless, but psychology shows that delay rewires power circuits. When intention is not followed by action, the brain reduces trust in its own commands. Self-trust erodes, and without self-trust, authority becomes hollow. The mind begins requiring motivation. Previously, intention was enough. Now, emotion is required. If the feeling isn't right, action waits. This dependence on mood is where decay accelerates, because moods are unstable leaders. They shift with comfort, fatigue, pleasure, distraction. When mood leads, consistency disappears. And when consistency disappears, identity fragments. The person becomes someone who can, but often doesn't. That gap is invisible to others, but brutally visible to the self. Creates quiet shame, not dramatic guilt, subtle self-disrespect, a feeling that one's word has lost weight. And once your own word loses weight with you, it loses weight everywhere. Authority cannot be faked externally when it has collapsed internally. This is why people surrounded by comfort often feel strangely weak. Life is smooth, yet something feels missing, because strength is not the absence of struggle. It is familiarity with resistance. Easy habits remove resistance completely, and without resistance, the nervous system becomes fragile. Small challenges feel heavy. Minor pressure feels overwhelming. The tolerance window shrinks. Psychology calls this comfort-induced fragility. The more the mind avoids strain, the less it can handle, and the less it can handle, the more it avoids. A loop forms. Comfort, avoidance, fragility, more comfort. This loop doesn't destroy ambition. It dissolves backbone. Backbone is not ambition. Backbone is the ability to act without emotional agreement. Easy habits train the opposite. They teach the mind, only act when it feels good. Over time, discomfort becomes unacceptable. The person begins protecting themselves from effort. They say things like, "I'm just not feeling it today. I'll do it when I'm ready. Right now I need rest." Rest becomes constant. Readiness never arrives, because readiness is born from action, not waiting. This creates a dangerous illusion that life is paused, but life is never paused. While waiting continues, authority erodes, and erosion never announces itself. It simply shows up later as lack of presence, weak boundaries, soft tone, reduced influence. People stop responding the same way, not because they changed, because your internal weight changed. Authority is mass, and mass is built through resistance. Easy habits remove mass. They lighten the mind until it can no longer press into reality, until it can no longer hold tension, until it can no longer command silence. This is how people lose impact without losing intelligence, lose influence without losing knowledge, lose respect without losing kindness. Because respect is not about behavior. It is about density, and density only forms under pressure. Easy habits do not just change behavior. They rewrite identity. First, the change is subtle. The person stops pushing themselves in small moments. They choose convenience when no one is watching. They delay what feels slightly uncomfortable. They excuse what could have been done. None of this feels serious, because identity doesn't shift in decisions that feel important. It shifts in decisions that feel insignificant. The brain records repetition, not intensity. One avoided effort means nothing. 100 avoided efforts become character. Over time, the mind begins to label itself, not consciously, internally. I'm the kind of person who struggles to stay consistent. I'm not very disciplined. I work better under pressure. These statements sound harmless, but they are identity anchors. Once the brain adopts them, it stops expecting authority from itself. And when expectation disappears, standards fall. Authority is built on expectation. You expect yourself to act, so you do. When expectation weakens, effort weakens with it. The mind stops asking for strength. It starts negotiating comfort. This negotiation becomes automatic. Every challenge is weighed emotionally, not rationally. How hard will this feel? How uncomfortable will this be? Effort is no longer measured by necessity, but by sensation. That is a psychological downgrade, because sensation is unreliable. A mind governed by sensation cannot lead, can only react. This is where people feel something strange. They are capable, but they don't feel capable. They know what to do, but don't feel aligned enough to do it. This gap creates internal confusion, and confusion erodes self-respect. Self-respect does not come from morality. It comes from alignment, doing what you say. When that alignment breaks repeatedly, the mind loses faith in itself. Not dramatically, quietly, you start doubting your own intentions. You hesitate before committing. You avoid making promises even to yourself, because promises have failed before. This is how easy habits shrink the internal horizon. The person stops thinking long-term, not because they don't care, because long-term requires discipline, and discipline now feels heavy. So the mind retreats into short-term comfort. Short-term always feels manageable, but it robs depth. A shallow life does not hurt immediately. It numbs slowly. Authority cannot exist in shallowness. Authority requires continuity, history, a sense that this person has weight. Weight comes from accumulated resistance. Easy habits interrupt accumulation. Nothing stacks. Every day resets. No momentum builds. And without momentum, identity feels hollow. People often describe this as feeling stuck. But stuck is misleading. They are not stuck. They are unanchored. Anchors come from effort repeated over time. Without anchors, the mind floats. Floating feels light until direction is needed. When pressure arrives, floating fails. The individual collapses faster than expected. Not because pressure was too much, because structure was too little. This is why easy habits make people fragile. Fragility is not weakness. It is lack of structural memory. The nervous system hasn't learned endurance, so it panics quickly, withdraws quickly, avoids quickly. Authority cannot survive panic. Authority requires tolerance. Tolerance requires exposure. Easy habits remove exposure, and what is never exposed never strengthens. This is how the mind loses its edge, not through failure, through avoidance of challenge. And avoidance slowly convinces the brain that challenge is dangerous. Once that belief forms, the mind protects comfort at all costs, even at the cost of power, even at the cost of respect, even at the cost of itself. At this stage, the damage caused by easy habits no longer feels active, feels settled. The mind adjusts to the absence of authority, not with panic, with acceptance. This is the most dangerous moment, because what the mind accepts, it stops trying to change. The individual no longer feels urgency about their decline. They normalize it. They say things like, "This is just how life is now. Everyone is tired." Motivation fades with age. These beliefs feel realistic. But psychology reveals something uncomfortable. They are not truths. They are adaptations. The mind adapts to avoid pain, and admitting loss of authority is painful. So the mind reframes weakness as maturity, avoidance as balance, softness as wisdom. This reframing protects the ego, but it quietly imprisons the self. Once authority loss is rationalized, growth becomes threatening, because growth would expose what was surrendered. So the mind resists effort not because it is hard, but because it reveals loss. Effort reminds the system of what it used to be capable of. That comparison hurts. So effort is avoided, not out of laziness, out of self-protection. This is why people say, "I don't want to push myself anymore," not because pushing is bad, but because pushing reveals contrast, and contrast awakens grief. Grief for potential, grief for discipline once held, grief for strength once familiar. Easy habits numb that grief. They create emotional insulation. Life becomes softer, but also smaller. The world narrows to what feels manageable. Ambition fades quietly, not consciously rejected, just left behind. And here authority does not collapse dramatically. It fades from memory. The person stops imagining themselves as powerful. They stop seeing themselves as someone who leads. They begin identifying as someone who copes. Coping replaces commanding. Surviving replaces directing. Comfort replaces character. From the outside, nothing looks wrong. The person functions, pays bills, maintains routine. But inside, something essential has gone quiet. Not peace, fire. The kind of fire that gives presence weight. Without it, speech loses gravity. Decisions lose conviction. Boundaries lose firmness. Others sense it instinctively. They don't disrespect consciously. They simply stop leaning in. Authority is not taken away. It is no longer offered, because authority must be felt. And feelings come from energy. Energy comes from tension held over time. Easy habits eliminate tension completely. Without tension, there is no charge. Without charge, there is no influence. This is why people with easy lives often feel invisible, not unloved. Invisible. They speak, but don't land. They act, but don't shift outcomes. They exist, but do not move rooms. This invisibility hurts more than failure, because failure implies strength was attempted. Invisibility implies it was never summoned. And this is the final psychological cost of easy habits. They don't break you. They convince you that you were never meant to be strong. That belief is the deepest damage, because beliefs shape ceilings. And once the ceiling lowers, life shrinks to match it. Easy habits never ask permission. They arrive quietly. They promise rest, comfort, balance. And for a while, they deliver. But slowly something shifts. The mind stops demanding strength from itself. Standards lower, edges soften. Not enough to notice, just enough to forget who you were becoming. Authority does not vanish in chaos. It dissolves in comfort, one avoided effort at a time, one postponed discomfort at a time, until the mind no longer expects obedience from itself. And when the mind stops leading itself, nothing else can. This loss does not announce itself with pain. It appears as numbness, as quiet acceptance, as the belief that this is simply adulthood. But somewhere beneath that belief, a different truth remains. You were not meant to cope forever. You were meant to command. And the moment you feel something missing, something weightless, something dim, that feeling is not weakness. It is memory, a memory of inner authority, waiting,